So Cece, you lived in Japan for 8 years and were working for half of that. So I don't know, explain how you went about finding a job when after graduating college in Japan.
Well, in Japan, a lot of times people will start looking for a job during their senior year. So you're applying to companies, you're going to career fairs. The whole process, shushoku katsudo, shukatsu, is honestly terrible. Like I hated, like the thing is when you start, you're like, oh, I'm excited, I'm gonna find a job. And then it's really, well, I mean, job hunting in general, like it really kind of fucks with your confidence, honestly. So when you're looking for a job, you're just like in any country, getting like several consecutive rejections, like definitely hits different. Um, and then eventually, as time goes on, you develop a thicker skin. And so you're really not afraid of anything at that point. You're just like, well, if they reject me, it is what it is. After that point, it really only hurts when you really, really wanted the position. Um, but yeah, a lot of people will start looking for jobs in their senior year of college, which is what I did. I went to a bunch of career fairs. Some career fairs were um, specifically looking for bilingual people. Some companies will let you know that they're open to international students. And some companies will straight up not be open to international students. And that is the reality of it. And as a foreigner working in Japan, unless you're teaching English, a lot of companies, actually, all companies will ask you for your JLPT score.
Oh yeah,
So the
yeah.
Japanese language and proficiency test. And to work in Japan, honestly, you need to have N2 or N1 or just don't put anything on your resume because like N3 through 5 doesn't look good on a resume. And honestly, it's kind of, I feel like the average Japanese hiring manager, unless they're used to hiring foreigners at that company, they hear and they don't really fully get how the system works. In the same way where, the average American person who is not used to hiring people from overseas would not understand what a TOEIC score is or a TOEFL score is. I literally remember, side note, when I was in Japan, I was on Tinder, and this one guy literally put his TOEIC score. And actually, a couple of men will put their TOEIC scores in their Tinder bio. And I'm like, first of all, it's like, first of all, I don't know what that means. And second of all, I didn't ask.
So like TOEIC and TOEFL, they're like two English proficiency exams, not only limited to Japan, but
Right.
kind of like a worldwide sort of thing.
Yeah, my dad took TOEFL before he started his residency training.
Yes, yes.
In Brooklyn.
Yeah, but I knew lots of people when I was studying abroad. They were like English majors and stuff like that, so they were constantly studying for the tests. And I did like a few test prep sessions with like students on campus and stuff like that. But I definitely feel like in like Japan, if you have like a TOEFL score, that like holds much more weight as like a Japanese person because it's like, you like you took a test, therefore you are good at it, sort of thing,
I'm not actually sure what the difference between TOEFL and TOEIC is.
They basically test different things, but they're still like English proficiency.
Right. Like one person told me that TOEIC is more for like business stuff.
I thought TOEFL was more for business stuff.
I have no idea.
Oh, well, we don't need to know because
I don't know.
We're already fluent in English, right?
Someone comment and let us know, or
Please
shoot us a message because I just don't. Like, by the time I was born, my dad already spoke English, and like we never talked about it. My mom told me about it like when I was like an adult. I was like, oh, he took that? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what was I about to say? Oh yeah, so basically the Japanese version of that is JLPT, and it's good to have N2 or N1 on your resume. Obviously, N1. Well, so N1 is the highest score the highest level,
Yeah.
and then N5 is the lowest. And honestly, if you, like, let's say you're applying for a job in the States and they don't really care if you speak Japanese or not, N3 through 5 is a cute thing to put on your resume, but nobody really cares.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you speak Japanese? That's interesting.
But
I
like,
don't have JLPT on my resume. Like I just, because I live in the United
you
States
take it?
now. I did. I took N2 and I failed, and I was like, man, fuck it.
well, same. I took it like 2019. Before the end of the world, like late 2019. And I
Honestly-
barely didn't pass it. That just like put the flame out of my passion
Honestly,
for
I
like,
never
studying
had time to
Japanese.
really study for it.
Yeah.
I just didn't have time to study for it.
No, but like the fact
Like-
that you wait. Okay, so let's get back to like how you got a job, because the fact that you didn't, or the fact that you failed the second highest level, but you still ended up working there for like 4 years. How was like the shukatsu? Because it's really funny with shukatsu, right? When I was like over there, the first time I realized it was a thing was that one day I like arrived on campus and like all these like students were just dressed up in suits.
Yep.
And like everybody had their like hair like super like straightened out or like in a bun for the girls. And I was like, I like asked one of my
Like
friends,
a bun
I'm
or
like,
a
what's going
ponytail
on?
or
Like,
short hair.
yeah, I was like, what's going on? And then one of them told me, oh yeah, because like now like shukatsu is starting, and there was like a there was like a job fair
Yep.
like on campus. And
Sounds about right.
I don't think job fairs are even like common in like America, right? Not
I
like
think
compared
they-
to Japan, yeah.
I mean, job fairs are definitely a thing here. Well, again, I've been like hardened and jaded by like the shukatsu process. I hate job fairs. I will keep it a buck with you. I hate going to job fairs because I feel like you're going talking to all these companies, giving them your contact info, like, trying to apply. And I've never gotten a job from a job fair. And after going to a few, I was like, I kind of feel like I wasted
So
my
you
time.
got your job through just like a regular interview then? Okay, so take us to the interview, just like
Okay, so,
how did it all go down?
So basically, I was looking, on the job listings online for any jobs that I was interested in. I did not want to teach English. And I actually did so basically when I finished university, I went to a language school to get my Japanese up to work in Japan. And
Oh, you did for like how long?
a little over a year.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
And because while my speaking and listening was good, my reading and writing needed to catch up. There was like a gap in them. So I was at a language school for a year and some change. And then when I was running out of time on my visa, I applied for a job to be an ALT, an assistant language teacher. And I did that for a couple months. Not even gonna lie, I did that for the visa.
Yeah,
and
of
the thing
course.
is, the kids were cute. It was great.
Like how old? Okay, so like take us to the process of like
Getting a
what
job
was it daily for you working like
as a teacher.
yeah as an
Oh.
ALT?
So basically, I get sent my schedule from the company, who shall not be named, because they were really disorganized. Like sometimes they would send me the
We should
complete.
warn people. I mean, what are they gonna do? Like sue you?
Honestly,
Just tell the people. Tell the people. They deserve to know.
well, the thing is, there are a couple really big companies
Yeah.
that are known for having ALTs. It was not the JET program, because the JET program apparently pays very well compared to like the other ALT programs, which pay horribly. I honestly would not recommend working as an ALT unless you're in the JET program, because otherwise you're going to get paid way too little to live. Anyway, but they would send me my schedule. Sometimes the schedule would be completely wrong, or they'd send me to the wrong school. But basically, I went between different schools, and like I would get there 30 minutes before my first class is supposed to start. I'd have the lesson plans that they set for us, and I would just kind of be working with the main teacher to, and what I liked about that job actually was the kids, because the job itself, the training sessions, the meetings that I had that were so far out of my way from where I was living, and the fact that their HR was so disorganized, they kept, sending me the wrong schedule, or, telling me to go to the wrong school, or they would send me the wrong schedule. I'd show up like way too late. And then the Japanese teachers who worked at those schools would look at me like, what's wrong with you? Why are you this late? And because I was able to speak Japanese, I explained to them, like, look, the company sent me this, and this is why I arrived here. And like the policy is to arrive 30 minutes early, which is what I always do. And the thing is, a lot of times the Japanese teachers can't speak English. So if you are in a position where you can't speak Japanese and your company kind of fucks you over like that, it makes you look bad. So I, fed up and underpaid, was not about to be scapegoated. So I was like, okay, this is the schedule that they fucking sent me.
Yeah.
And then there was another situation where they sent me a schedule, but there were no times written on it. And I was like,
Just gotta guesstimate.
but I mean, I guess the main office people were underpaid too, because like everything was just so disorganized and they just needed like foreign dancing monkeys for the classroom.
Basically, I mean, because that's how, even like the JET program, that's all it really is. Just like you're
At least the
kind
JET
of-
program like pays you enough to like live comfortably.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
relatively comfortably too, like in ALT, any other ALT
Yeah.
programs.
Because as like an English teacher, if you go through the JET program, or like really, if you're not working for a private or for like a private school, like you like directly apply to their school and they like hire you. You are more or less English entertainment. To be honest.
I mean, honestly, I was just there for the visa and like the kids were fun. Like
Yeah.
playing with like, so it was 1st to 4th grade that I was teaching. And like a lot of them were really fun, cute kids. Like it's one of those things that kind of made living in Japan easier in the sense that like, cultural differences are learned. You learn them as you get older. So a lot of times I would see a kid do something or say something that would bring me all the way back to elementary school. And I was like, oh my God, he reminds me of my friend from when I was in 1st grade, or, oh, this little boy's a little bit weird, but if I were 8, we'd be best friends. Like, because I was weird in the same way when I was your age. Like, or like, well, not weird, like, but, like a
Yeah.
goofy,
I mean,
fun
kids are
kid.
kids.
Right, because
Yeah.
kids are kids.
Yeah. But did you ever feel like, outside of like like the HR messiness and like whatever, did you ever feel like you were exploited or like you were just there to...
Well, yeah, because honestly, the pay was way too little. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was a pittance. And for them to expect excellence when they pay that much, they need to know what they're getting.
So
and,
going back
yeah.
to your main job now.
So my main job. So basically,
so you were doing AOT for a couple of months.
and then
you
on my lunch
transitioned
break,
to-
I was like, because sometimes teachers will eat with the kids. They're like, "Oh, Sensei, are you gonna eat lunch with me?"
Like,
and
"No,
I was
get off of
like,
me."
"No, I'm going back to the teacher's room. Sorry." And I was like looking on the online job listings, and I was applying, all of that. And so basically, I was interviewing while I was working as an ALT, because I was on the instructor visa, and I needed to find another job that would sponsor a work visa, a different kind of work visa. So eventually, I was interviewing, and I got a job working in the PR department of a restaurant company.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
And
what was it like working for that company? Like, what are like the daily?
a lot
in
of
and outs
translation,
it?
because they would have press releases, but so it was really my first time translating press releases, and sending them out to the media, doing a lot of pitching, which is a lot.
So
of
were
what
you pitching in Japanese?
I was pitching to the English speaking media. So because I was working in Japan as a foreigner in PR, I was
They
working.
would never
in-
put you in front of like other Japanese people in a.
I mean, sometimes I would work with other, like, external Japanese people, but I was mainly doing the foreign targeted PR. So I was doing that for a year at a restaurant company, and then I wanted to expand and beyond restaurants. So I went to a hotel. So I was doing so basically I was doing hospitality PR. And then while it helped me get my foot in the door in public relations, I feel like I'm doing a job interview right now, explaining my job history. Well, I ended up deciding, I kind of want to move closer to what I actually studied, which was economics. So since moving to New York, I work in financial communications, which personally I find is more intellectually stimulating, and the pay is way better, way better. Like hospitality PR is not that great. And then when I was working in hotels,
So-
I worked with a lot of influencers, and that was terrible. Which is ironic. I mean, the terrible thing is sometimes influencers can be really
Terrible?
entitled.
Yeah.
And they'd ask you for free things, like, can we stay at the hotel for free? And I'd be like, no. Like, you can't, no. And then they would get mad at me, and I'd get hate in my inbox. And But I mean, it's ironic that I complain about influencers working on a podcast.
I mean, listen, I'm not trying to like sell people skinny pills, not yet at least.
No flat tummy
we're
tea?
different. No,
No
like,
flat tummy
tummies over
tea?
here.
No appetite suppressing lollipops?
No, not over here.
We do not endorse eating disorders.
No.
Absolutely not.
But going back, so what were some of the issues, or like what were some of the weird moments that you had working in PR for like for this restaurant company and for this hotel company? Like the very specific Japanese things that you would never, like, cultural Japanese things, and working inside of like a company that kind of like threw you off your game or just annoyed you.
Well, certain things were like, okay, well, first of all, working in Japan, a lot of things are very bureaucratic. I guess what's frustrating is when you're a 20-something woman, and especially a foreigner, you're not really allowed to have a dissenting opinion. At best, you'll get it ignored. At worst, like, your supervisor will act like you're disrespecting them by having that dissenting opinion. And even if your supervisor asks you to do something that makes no sense, if you challenge that, you're all of a sudden insubordinate. So that was like a fine line to toe. And a lot of it too has to do with, an individual's sense of who they are. Like, if you're working for an insecure person, it's going to be difficult no matter what country you're in. But like, one thing I didn't like was like, I felt like a lot of times like my voice was being like silenced or stifled. And I just don't really like that. And and unfortunately it had an effect on me when I moved back, because I moved back to the US and, my supervisor says something or tells me something, and like, I was so like, it's so ingrained in me not to question it, or it's so ingrained in me to apologize too much, because Japanese people apologize a lot, but in the United States, an apology is like an admission of guilt. And like, at worst, you make people uncomfortable or annoyed. You make them annoyed when you apologize too much in the States, or you sound so insecure. But in Japan, like, you can't apologize enough. So that was the thing I had to like adjust to moving back. The restaurant company I worked at, every week, Monday morning, they would have a morning meeting, and like, basically the company had like these 10 principles to like live by, and like we would like recite them. They were all related they were all related to customer service, because it was a restaurant company, and we had to like recite them. Like, one person would say them, we all repeat them, and it was very culty. Like, it kind of, in hindsight, it was not even in hindsight. At the time, I was like, this kind of feels like a cult.
Yeah. The cult of good quality service.
Yeah. And I was just kind of like, I really don't see the point in all of this, but I guess it makes the CEO feel good about himself. Like, I can't.
So was it a big company or like a mid-level company?
I'd say mid-level.
Okay.
They had several restaurants all around.
Were you the only foreigner working there?
In the main office, I was one of 4 foreigners working there.
Okay, so you're your own posse.
But we were all in different departments.
So you never met up with like other foreigners to confide?
Oh, I did.
Each other?
I did. I definitely.
Were they American or?
No.
No. None of them were American?
No, I had a Russian coworker in HR, and we go for lunch all the time. And there was a point where, like, when things were getting rough for me at the company, he noticed, but there wasn't a whole lot he could do, because again, similar situation. Like, the one foreigner working in that department, if they speak up about something and people don't like what they spoke up about, they just pretend not to hear it at best. At worst, it can have a really negative effect on you.
If you were to do it all over again, how would you do things differently?
That's hard to say, because a lot of my motivation to stay and look for a job in Japan was influenced by a lot of things. One is the Japanese healthcare system. I knew that, in America, it's like, you get sick, shame on you. I was still young enough to be on my parents' health insurance, so that wouldn't have been too bad, but that was always a concern of mine. I also thought, looking like, get rid of all my stuff and relocate back to the States, and then I might still have the same problem trying to find a job with no experience as a new grad. There was also the factor that I'm in New York now because I got a job here. I'm not from here, I didn't grow up here. I have family in Jersey, but my parents do not live in I don't have like, you know, I don't have immediate family in an area that I could see myself living in and thriving and enjoying like I was in Tokyo. And also I had a lot of friends in Tokyo that I wasn't ready to leave.
So if you were to do it all over again, would you just try and pursue a job in what you were studying back in the States, like immediately, not try and like, you know, do side jobs or
Well,
like, would you
actually,
feel more confident?
I did not know. I didn't consider going into financial communications in the beginning. And I feel like hospitality is the niche in PR that you can fit as a foreigner. Because if I was back in the States, I probably would have tried to do like fashion PR or entertainment PR. That's where my mind would have gone, you know, as a new grad. Now that I've been, you know, working for a few years, I have no interest in anything fashionable. Because you do PR for luxury brands, like the luxury brands don't pay as much.
Yeah.
They give you perks to distract you from the fact that you're struggling to make rent. That's a generalization, but you know, finance and tech is where the money is. And that's at this point, I'm just like, I don't care how cool it sounds at a party. I just want to live comfortably. But if I were to go back and do it differently, I really don't know what I would do because there's certain aspects of the Japanese working culture that are just very toxic, quite frankly. And it does not sit well with me. I think I had a lot more patience for that kind of fuckery because I was younger. And when you're younger, you put up with a lot of shit. Like when you're a new grad and you start to work in a toxic work environment, there's a lot of things that you normalize. And I still see it to this day. Like in, you know, even in the States, you know, if you're in a toxic work environment and your coworkers just graduated college in June and they enter a company, then they're just like, oh, this is fine, this is normal. Like they'll think it's normal. So that's why I was able to put up with the toxicity for a while. But after a few years, I was like, I'm getting older. The pay is not great. And there's a few things that are considered harassment that in Japan, they're just like, oh, this is fine.
Yeah, like the heavy drinking culture and like things like that.
I mean, the thing is, nobody ever actually made me drink because
that's good.
I think part of it could be a gender thing, but also part of it too is a lot of people in Japan recognize like a company that makes you drink is a toxic company. But there were toxic things I witnessed or experienced in other ways.
Yeah, like what?
I definitely saw someone get sexually harassed in the office.
Oh, okay.
Nothing was done about it because the perpetrator was like, it was the middle of his notice period. He did not give a fuck. And, you know, being privy to that sort of thing, I was just kind of like, okay, this is not okay.
Yeah.
Watching someone get power harassed or hearing them get power harassed. And I thought it was so wild how like people would complain about me. Like, so I'd be working, I'd have my headphones in and I'd be working and they'd be like, oh my God, why are you doing that? Stop doing that. That's not allowed.
Like listening
to music while you work.
Really?
They're like, that's not allowed. Why are you doing that? Whereas
there's actually something funny because apparently.
No, but the thing is, at one point I had to do it because I couldn't fucking focus because I was listening to this one guy in a different department basically cuss out his subordinate.
Yeah.
Like completely like, dude lost his fucking temper. And he would do this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And he's cussing out this other guy who's like maybe a year or two older than me because he's younger and he can do it. Like basically shitting on your subordinates because you want to take advantage of the power imbalance. Which again, that happens in the United States as well. But I feel like in Japan, it's tolerated to a much higher degree than it is in the States. So things like that, you know, so if I were to go back and do it differently, I'm not sure what I would do because at the end of the day, like I was able to get years of experience under my belt. Am I traumatized by it? Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'd say overall, my experience working in Japan was kind of traumatic.
Sorry to hear that.
If I were to go back to Japan, I probably would only want to go back if I'm, so basically, if you work for a company in your home country and they send you to work at their Japanese office, sometimes, you get a really, enticing package where they'll like, give you a housing allowance or pay for your kids' school tuition, but that's for people who are like higher up executives. And your salary is good. Your salary is good, your lifestyle is good, and you're pretty high up, and you can work in Japan for a few years and move on with your career. And I would only go back if I had that kind of an expat package. Otherwise, I can't see myself working in Japan again.
Well, I feel like that on that note, you should talk about my working experience because I never had nearly as toxic as an experience because I was a student over there. So I was only allowed to do
28 hours a week.
not even, yeah, stuff like that. But like most of the jobs I got was
Oh yeah,
through
on a
my
student
school.
visa, you can work in Japan,
Yeah,
but only part-time.
yeah.
In America, I heard you can't work on a student visa here.
I don't think you could work on an international student visa. Because I feel, yeah, definitely like on a regular student visa, like there's so many people that work like American citizens that like have like part-time jobs.
That's not a visa then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
Exactly.
like,
You said international student visa. Like, is
Yeah.
there any other kind of student visa?
Anyway, I don't know. I don't know.
So yeah,
like,
obviously a student
Yeah.
is allowed to work in the United
But
States if they're
anyway,
American citizens.
even
called work
though
authorization.
even though I had a visa, a student visa, so the jobs that I did officially were just jobs that the school's international division had like posted, teach English here and teach English there. But I actually did something illegal on the download, and I worked at a now defunct bar.
Not you admitting to a crime on video.
What? Am I gonna get extradited to like Japan? I would love to. Well, not for the conviction rate, but like I would love to be back in Japan by any means necessary. But maybe not that so. Maybe not that far.
Listen, those immigration detention centers are no joke.
Yeah, no. But so in my attempt to find a working visa to extend my stay in Japan, which spoiler, I just ended up going to Korea for a weekend and coming back and claiming like
The tourist visa?
Tourist visa. But in an attempt to do that, I stumbled upon a job at this bar, and this bar was owned by this guy from Washington Heights who moved to Japan like 30 plus years ago and opened up a bar. And it was such a cool vibe. Like it was like on the second floor.
Not you
and it was
snitching
like
on this man.
I'm not saying his name. And like,
Snitching on your fellow gaijin.
Oh my god, he's still over there, by the way. Like throughout the pandemic, like he has his roots down there.
Well,
like,
yeah, 30 years,
for
I
like
can
30
imagine.
years.
Wait, so he's been there as long as, since before you were born?
Yeah, he's been there
before
since
I
like
was
the
born.
late 30s.
The late 30s?
Since like the late 80s. Sorry about that.
Since the late 80s.
Since like the
Okay,
late
so
80s.
yeah, basically before either of us were born.
Yeah.
Oh, I
But-
mean, it makes sense though, because the 80s were lit in Japan.
Yeah.
The bubble era?
Yeah.
Whew.
So, well, he came there right as it was ending, so like
Damn.
early '90s. But he was still there for like a few good years. Like I saw like vintage pictures of him,
Women with
in
their
his
feathered
prime.
bangs.
Yeah.
And the
But
shoulder pads.
he basically took me in as his own, real recognized real. We were both from New York, so he saw a light in me, a certain New York light in me, and he was like, "Yeah, feel free to work here. Like it will be under the books. I mean, under the table, but you'll be able to make money and like survive here." So I did do that. So I was a bartender.
Is he married
for
to a
about 3
Japanese
months.
woman?
I'm not sure. He wasn't married. I don't think he's married, but he's just been able to live there, and like, cause he started a business there, so the bar is his business. Like he has like a restaurant business or like a restaurant license, so that's how he was like able to do it. But yeah, so he basically took me in, and for like 2 to 3 months, I was a bartender under the table, obviously. But it was a really cool experience, chatting with people, learning how to make drinks and things of that nature. And being a bartender in Japanese was very interesting because, I mean, my Japanese isn't perfect, but it is like I am intermediate, so it was fun, talking
You're
with drunk
fluent.
people
Shut
in
up.
Japanese. Not at all. No.
No, shut up.
No, not at all.
No, 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 no,
Not
no,
at
no, no,
all.
no, no. Okay, we're in New York. You don't have to be modest anymore.
No,
Because
I'm
when
not
you're
being
too
modest.
modest, people think that
No.
you're incapable.
No. I'm not.
I've
I'm
literally
not,
heard
I'm
your
not good.
Japanese. It's good.
Yeah, it's decent, but it's not the best. But anyway, that's to say that it is an option to kind of work under the books in Japan as a student.
Don't tell people that.
No, I mean it's true though. Like I was able to do it, and lots more people do it. Like I know other people who did it as well.
Like,
Listen,
are you gonna tell
just
them
don't
how
get
to
caught.
fucking
Just don't get caught.
smuggle people in?
No,
like,
not
are you gonna
smuggling people.
Are you gonna?
They were.
Are you gonna?
If you're here
give
on a student
advice
no,
on human trafficking.
if you're
next?
there,
Are
if
you
you're
gonna
there-
give advice on how to sling crack next?
listen.
That was a joke. If any Japanese government people are watching this or listening,
if you're there on a student visa, yeah, like you can work at a Family Mart or at a 7-Eleven.
let me
But I
preface
did a
this.
much cooler thing and worked at a bar over there where I was able to
Let me
meet
preface this.
many interesting
the
people.
Japanese immigration law, specifically with student visas, when I was there, said that you cannot work at a bar or a
Exactly.
club or anything like a hostess or host bar, whatever. You can't do anything like that. You can't even wash the dishes or mop the floors in those types of clubs. It's completely against the law. If you do get caught, you can be deported. And I heard about a Chinese woman on a student visa who worked as in a hostess club, as a kyabakura, and she not only got deported, she was barred from re-entering Japan for the next 5 years.
That's crazy.
So what I'm saying is exercise caution.
Extreme caution. I got super lucky.
Yeah, because if it got raided
the
or
police-
anything, if the
yeah.
police showed up, because the
Yeah.
thing is too, people are constantly checking. A lot of people get racially profiled in Japan. They will check your ID and to see if you're overstaying or to see the type of visa that you have. So for example, when I was a student, I was on the student visa. When I was teaching, I was on the instructor visa. And then when I was doing PR, I was on the specialist in humanities visa. And that one was a lot more broad in terms of what types of jobs I could do. So when I was working and it was also a 5-year visa that I was able to get. And when I was working there and with the specialist in humanities visa, I could pretty much do
Whatever you
any kind
wanted.
of job,
Yeah.
but obviously not, work at a
Nightlife.
hostess club, not things like that. But any kind of an office job, a specialist in humanities could mean a lot of things. But that's the thing, you really, technically the only way as a foreigner where you can work at something seedy is if you're permanent resident,
Yeah.
married to a Japanese national, naturalized, which I didn't plan on doing any of those. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about getting married. I was young. I was like,
Yeah.
a husband? What am I, a child bride? No.
But that's to say that as a student, your options are super limited. So most of the time, you'll be able to get English teaching jobs, whether through your school's international division or just through finding it through other means. You could do it privately. You
Well, yeah,
find
you can
somebody
also,
that
or you
just
can also babysit. There are a lot of
Yeah.
jobs that you can do as a student, like teaching English,
Yeah.
English cafe, which is even better because all you
I've
do
done.
is
Oh, so English. I thought English
English
cafe,
cafe?
was something unique to my school. I didn't know it was a.
no,
Yeah.
it's great. All you really do is you sit there, you sip coffee, and you chat
Talk
with the
with
Japanese
people.
person.
Yeah.
You get paid by the
Yeah.
hour, and it
Make it go as long as possible.
exactly. And all I did was sit there for a couple hours, have conversations with people, and I would get paid. And it's
also,
not obviously it's
yeah.
not seedy. It's literally people going to practice their English.
Yeah, and also there's an option for you to work in retail, say at Don Quixote or.
Well, yeah, you can also work at
Yeah.
a restaurant. Depending on your Japanese language ability, there are lots of part-time jobs that students can do.
Yeah.
For example, working at a restaurant is difficult if you can't speak any Japanese at all. But if your Japanese is good enough, you can easily work at a restaurant. There are lots of jobs that you could do part-time as a student. I would say the only thing that really limits you when it comes to part-time work is your Japanese ability, whatever it may be. When it comes to full-time work, your Japanese ability is a huge part of it too. And then there are some companies that don't want to hire foreigners. And while they might, legally, I don't know if they can say it, but they'll have other ways of saying that they only want Japanese people. They'll basically, when it comes to language ability, they'll specify native. They won't say JLPT N1. They won't say fluent. They'll say native. And the
But why you
implication,
just like pull up with like somebody like you or like Kiara who like could speak very, very well?
no, like they want a Japanese person. It's like the unspoken, you know.
Yeah.
Also, like, you know, certain things in Japan when it comes to Japanese that are different is when you have a resume. Resumes don't have to be handwritten like they used to be anymore, but like they have to have your picture on it. And in the United States,
that's so weird. Yeah, like imagine
unless
having
you're
to do
like
that in America.
right, unless you're an actress or a model. In America, like unless it's
Yeah.
entertainment, they don't want to see your picture.
Yeah, that's
I mean, they
great.
can
Yeah.
Google you if they want. They can look you up on social media. That's
Wait, like
on them.
the
but,
Japanese company? Oh, or just
I
saying
mean,
in general?
here.
Okay, yeah.
But like, you know, because
Yeah, I
it's
forgot
in
about
an
that.
effort to prevent discrimination in the workplace.
Like in Japan?
Here.
Here? Oh, okay, yeah.
So here, unfortunately, employees discriminate by other things, you know, names.
Yeah. So imagine like having to put your name, because I totally forgot about that. That with your resume, so you get like a passport size photo and you attach it to your resume, and you know
Glue it on
when
there.
you're like.
And well, also the thing is, my
Job
picture was
searching.
there, my name was there, because I don't have a Japanese name. It's very clear. It's a Western name in katakana.
Yeah.
I also had to put my schools on there, and my high school was a high school in the United States, so it didn't have a Japanese name either. So it's very clear I went to this high school, like, so they know for a fact that I'm a foreigner. But again, I would only apply for jobs that would. I would never apply for jobs that it was clear to me that they were looking for a Japanese person. And no matter how good your Japanese is, it's kind of like, when you really think about it, it's like if this job is really reluctant to hire a foreigner, there's a possibility that it's not going to be a good work environment because they don't really want you there. They reluctantly hired you. So you're really not missing out in that sense.
Before we end the podcast, something that I do want to talk about is going back to kind of like the jet and English teacher sort of like route. I'm super jealous. Let me start it off with like Canadians, Europeans, and Australians. Working holidays. Like in America, how do we have like 4 or 5 bases in Japan, but we don't have the working visa treaty? Because apparently it's like a treaty
I think it's reciprocal. A Japanese person
Japan's
could not.
like already like we
No,
already have
I'm
so
pretty
many of your
sure it's
soldiers over here. We
reciprocal.
don't want any more of you.
I'm saying I
Yeah.
think it's reciprocal because the Japanese person can't get a working holiday visa to study
No,
in the
which
United
sucks.
States.
Yeah. So like
The American immigration system is a whole
it's
entire
terrible,
mess.
but
It's a whole entire mess.
I'm just like mad that
My parents were actually
Yeah.
because my dad is also your parents are from a different country too.
Yeah.
So like our parents get it. Like when I told my dad I wanted to work in Japan, he was like, "How do you think I'm gonna be able to get a visa though?"
Yeah,
Like he
yeah.
expected my getting a visa in Japan to be a much more difficult process than it was. In Japan, if you find a
Well, like you did it through like already being there as a student, so that's easier. But what I'm talking about is, so working holiday, it's a type of visa
you
that
can still just apply to be an ALT. They'll sponsor your visa. You get there, you quit, and then you look for another job and you quit.
you can do. But the thing,
It's a thing you can do. I'm not saying I endorse it, but I don't judge
As
you
an
if you do.
American, it's just like way harder to get a visa compared to other, Western countries, because America and Japan, they don't have the working holiday visa, and working holiday is a type of visa where you are working, it's a job, but since you're out of like your home country, it's considered like a holiday. But for whatever reason, we don't have that agreement between America and Japan,
Also-
which really sucks. But moving on to to talking about working as like an English teacher, realistically, I could probably be back in Japan if I did decide to go down that route, but I already hate my 9-to-5 job, and doing like office jobs or something where I have to wake up super early in the morning, I've learned the hard way, isn't for me. And as like an English teacher, you're basically a glorified, I don't know, English robot. It seems from what I've like gathered through like social media and like different interviews with like English teachers over there.
And honestly, I would
Yeah.
say like, I feel like if you genuinely do have a passion for teaching,
Yeah, do it.
and you want to live in Japan, then I think it's the right route for you. A lot of the foreigners who live in Japan teach English
As a means to an end.
as a means to an end. Like, if your Japanese is not that great, but you're from the United States,
They actually don't want people that could speak Japanese well. So this isn't
honestly,
a
don't
conspiracy.
just don't tell them you can speak Japanese.
But
Be
so,
like, wakarimasen.
on the JET application, right? They will ask you for your JLPT score, and I've heard it from other friends that have done the JLPT. I mean, that have like done the JET program, or they know people who like done JET. That like, the less you could speak Japanese, the better, because like a lot of these schools are of the mindset of like, oh, if you don't speak Japanese, you'll be forced to use English around the kids. But I'm like, if you're bilingual, that doesn't really matter. Like and it just seems like the less qualified you are to be a teacher, or not to be a teacher, but the less qualified you are to maybe live in Japan without the English teacher visa, the more likely you are to get the job.
Honestly,
Or maybe that's just my like bias, but that does seem to be the
Honestly,
case from my experience. or
so
from
so
my-
basically, with the
yeah.
JET program, it's a lot more selective.
It's
The
super
other
selective.
the other ALT companies, they really don't. They just want a warm body who can speak English.
But there's danger in that, because you could get into lots of like shady situations, or like
So
really.
what I
yeah.
would say is, if you do go the ALT route to get to Japan, make sure you have a lot of money in savings, because because you really need it, because the pay is terrible. You get paid super late in the month after your rent should be due, and it's a mess. So if it's a means to get into Japan, I would just recommend having a bunch of money in savings in case of an emergency, which will show up if you don't have any money. But again, they're not nearly as selective as the JET program. Like, they want a warm body who can sing to kids in English.
Exactly so. Yeah, but if you do have a passion for that type of stuff, like, go ahead and do it. But for me personally,
If your passion is teaching, I would recommend JET, because you'll get paid way better. And if your passion is teaching, I'd say go for it. If your passion is not teaching, you just want to get into Japan, I'm not going to judge you. No judgment here, because it really is the easiest way to get there. Conversely, I met a Japanese guy who was studying to be a sushi chef. And I was like, oh, do you like sushi? He's like, nah, I just want to move back to the States, and that's the easiest way to get a visa. And I was like, oh, that's exactly why I thought
he was studying to become a sushi chef in Japan in order to get to America.
Because when you think about it, like, let's say you're in, I'll say Atlanta, Georgia, specifically the East Coast to Southeast. The Japanese population is not that high there. But if you go to a restaurant and you find out that, oh, this is a sushi restaurant and the chef is from Japan. His name is
yeah.
Takahashi. Super common name in Japan. I don't remember this guy's name. This was a casual acquaintance.
Yeah.
But Chef Takahashi from Japan, this is going to be so authentic. You can make the most mediocre Japanese sushi, but a person from the East Coast who's never been to Japan, who doesn't really know about that, is not going to notice.
Yeah.
So that's why I never judged him for that, because I was like, you know what?
Nah, get your bag.
You're smart. You're resourceful, Takahashi-san. That was not his name. You resourceful. You smart.
Yeah. So, all this to say that I'm just miffed that it's hard for us Americans.
Personal
to
question.
Get,
Personal question.
the one time my
Did Jen
American
reject you?
privilege. Yes, that's why I'm so mad.
Okay. I mean, no offense, but I was like, oh, this sounds personal.
Yeah, it is personal.
Sounds very
for me.
personal. Can
But
you apply again, like another year?
I don't, because the thing is that you have to get like recommendations from like people, and like I don't want
I
to.
can write you a recommendation.
But like, what can you say? Because they want recommendations from like professors and stuff like that. And I don't want to have to hit up old professors, and
You don't have
that
your old
haven't met in
professor's
like 3
contact?
years. I do, but
It's only
like
been 3 years. I still have my professor's contact info.
3 years is but it's like.
Are you not
I don't
on
wanna hit them
LinkedIn?
up. I am, but that is an issue. It's just not worth it to because.
To shoot
The
them an
thing with
email?
like JET is that you can't even so you could choose where you want to go to, But legitimately, if you choose kind of like the big cities, guaranteed that you won't end up in Tokyo, Osaka, Sapporo, like the big cities. Like
if you go to Tokyo, they'll send you to the minor outlying islands in the Pacific because those are still technically Tokyo. There was a point when in between 2015 and 2020, they were sending more jets to Tokyo in anticipation of the Olympics. So I had a friend who actually did get sent to Tokyo.
Like central Tokyo.
She was in Western Tokyo at first, in the countryside, but then she asked to be closer to her doctor because she saw a specialist for something. And they put her like central Tokyo, like Hamamatsucho area.
I would do that, but I would say I have a very specific hair issue, and my specialist is in Tokyo.
Just say
my
you have
hair specialist. No, keep it on the down low.
Come up with a better lie
salon.
than that. See, I come up with a much better lie than that because I work in fucking PR.
Yeah. All right, tell me how to spell it.
You need to craft a better narrative.
Yeah.
Like, who's the spin doctor here?
You are, yeah. But so with the JET program, you will most likely be sent to the countryside because that's where I guess English education is needed the most.
Well, I mean,
And
people who
they
live
don't want-
outside of large cities are less likely to interact with the person from an English-speaking country.
Yeah. And that's all and good. But I have my own personal goals.
I mean,
so-
I didn't interact with Japanese people. I rarely interacted with a Japanese person in my hometown.
Yeah.
I grew up down south.
Yeah.
And not in a super big city. It was a suburb, but so I kind of relate to that, to the Inaka struggle, because I too.
Like it's not bad, and like I am happy, or I do want more Japanese people to learn how to learn English. But for me personally, I'm not trying to be in the middle of nowhere. While in Japan, that's the thing about Japan. Even if you're in the middle of nowhere, it's like the most aesthetic thing. So
well, I think honestly, a lot of that depends on the personality. Some people genuinely are not suited to big cities. Some people don't enjoy living in cities.
And those people are weird.
And some people enjoy living in cities. Like personally, I like living in
people.
He's from New York, so of course he would say some shit like that. I grew up in the suburbs, and I personally always wanted to.
Bumpkin like you were. No, sorry, that was mean.
So I've always liked living in cities, so that's why I was happy to move to New York from Tokyo. That's also the reason why I liked living in Tokyo. I just like living in a city. That's my personality, but I've met plenty of people who prefer to live in, the countryside, who prefer a smaller town. And so if that's your vibe and you really want to get to Japan and teach English, then I highly would recommend the JET program.
Yeah.
So out of all the ALT programs, it really is the best. I can't give you definitive, reasons based on experience because I have not had that experience. I have friends who did do it. And I think that if you want to immerse yourself in Japanese culture away from a large city, then the JET program is for you.
It's a great way to do it.
And if you want to stay, you can, make the trek to Tokyo or Osaka or any bigger city if you would like to do that.
But I guess this is now a good place to end this episode of the podcast. And let us know if you have more specific questions. Like I was banking on my friends to send useful questions, but nobody did. So
cut that part out. That sounds mad depressing.
No. Just nobody really replied because anyway. So I didn't get because I wanted to do kind of like a question and answer sort of thing, but that didn't end up panning through. But thank you for watching this episode of the Black Japan Podcast. If you have any questions about working in Japan, leave them in the comments. Me or Cece should be able to answer them. Probably Cece because she's the real expert over here. But thank you for watching this episode of the Black Japan Podcast, and see you in the next one.